Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Brett Jones. I am the director of filmmaking at Wichita State University, and we partnered with Wichita State University Theater Department in February of 2020 to produce a 3-episode situation comedy. So we're going to talk about the behind the scenes with the 4 actors, and we have the 4 actors. And I will hand it over to them to introduce themselves and what part they played in the sitcom. Mirta, why don't you kick us off?
Right, my name is Mirta Santana Morales, and I'm playing Astrid in the sitcom of Thrilled to Announce.
Kieran?
Yo, I'm Kieran Philip Schaetler, and I play the character of Ben in Thrill to Announce.
Alice?
Hey, I'm Alice Cashman, and I play Sierra in Thrilled to Announce.
And Nora?
Hi, I'm Nora Dooley, and I play Marla in Thrilled to Announce.
So we thought this would be an interesting collaboration between filmmaking and involve filmmakers and involve theater to shoot a situation comedy, 3 episodes over 3 weeks. And we rehearsed Monday through Friday, shot it Friday without an audience and Saturday with an audience. And then we started the next episode the following Monday. So the actors were having to work very quickly. The premise for the show, Thrilled to Announce, is it is a group that live together in an apartment in Chicago that are all trying to work as professional actors in Chicago. So that's the premise. And so it deals primarily with their ups and downs and struggles and also the personal relationships that they have. So to really kick it off where you all do the talking, what were your expectations or preconceived notions of how this was going to work, since we've never done anything like this before?
For me, I had also never done film acting in general, let alone film acting in front of a live audience, which is another whole variable on top of that. And I was, as much as I could, trying to go into it with a completely fresh mind, as much as I can prepare myself for anything. But like I said, I didn't know anything. And it was initially was a relatively steep learning curve, and still is for any future film acting that I will do. By that, I mean in the sense of knowing where the camera is and knowing where the boom is, where the microphone is. For me, that ended up being a struggle, which I completely did not expect to think about, because obviously you need to be aware of where the camera is, aka your proper audience, and also where you need to direct your sound to, and where you need to direct your facial gestures to, more or less. That was a really interesting thing that I did not expect at all. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, to kind of go along off of that, like it's so much more technical than I was anticipating it to be. Like I had done a few like short films, and I did like a tiny little part in a feature film a couple years ago, but I've mainly, done theater, and I'm majoring in musical theater. So like that's kind of my bread and butter right there. So I didn't really have much of like an idea of what to expect, but it was just really, yeah, it's so technical, kind of like what Kieran was saying about, just there's so many things that you have to keep in mind in addition to like your character and your objective and, all the normal acting things that you have to do. So that was just, it was a really big learning experience. And it was just like a lot to kind of take in all at once. And I tried to kind of go into it as if I was like on the set of like a real commercial sitcom. So I tried as much as possible to not learn my lines beforehand, which I maybe regretted a little bit, because it was a lot of work, but it was just really cool to see how like we all, everyone was so prepared and everyone worked so hard, and it just all came together right when it needed to.
You mean, what you mean when you say not learn your lines is not work on them in January, but actually start in February. It's the week of. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I tried to, take each episode each week and just kind of start fresh, as if I was like getting a new episode each week. And I didn't have them all to begin with.
Yeah, something I liked that we did that I'm so grateful that the entire cast agreed on doing is meeting up the Sunday before we started the week of that episode to go over lines and just keep going over lines as much as we could. We managed to connect really easily with each other and just joke around and get the giggles out. And then when we started the week, we started out fresh. We were kind of familiar with the lines already, and we were just trying our best to play with each other. And I really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
I had been in a short film for WSU before Thrill to Announce, so I kind of had an idea of what to expect as far as the technical elements. And for that, we had a small crew and we did on-location shooting. But going into Thrilled, I don't think I was really prepared for just the size of everything being shot up.
Yeah.
The crew was bigger. The set, we had an actual set to play with. We had actual costumes and a bunch of them. So it was just getting used to that size and working with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the crew was absolutely phenomenal. They did such an amazing job, and everyone did. And it's so crazy to realize how many people are involved in it and how many people have such an important job that needs to happen. I mean, that all the props people, there were 4 or 5 of them in total, including the preparation time. And the costume people and the makeup people who, when you call cut, they all come out of the woodwork from the back or from behind the set, and they make sure that everything is set correctly again. That was exhilarating to me. That was probably my favorite part, how there were so many people at some point just like swarming around, making sure everything was exactly
Yeah, you liked
right.
being toadied over. That's what it was.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. Heck yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you go and watch a movie in like a movie theater, you watch a movie at home, and like at the end there are like all these end credits. And I had never really stopped to think about just how many people go into creating just one film project. But like it was so cool to be able to actually be a part of that project and actually see just how many people went into the creation of it. Like, I mean, we had 4 cast members, but then we had, what was it, like 40 or 50 crew members like on set pretty much every day when we were filming. And like that was just, it was just kind of jaw-dropping to just be a part of that. And like, I would do my job and I would act and stuff, but that was only just like this little tiny portion of it. And like the rest of it, I was so like in the background and just hands off, like, because everybody just knew what they had to do and they would do it. And like they would reset everything after the takes. And like, this was the first time I didn't do my own makeup and hair. And like, that was a weird experience. Like, I did not expect that to be like the weirdest part of this whole thing, but it was just really cool because like we developed a relationship with our makeup person who was like assigned to us and did our makeup every time. So it's just really cool how much of a like communal work it was.
Honestly, that was the part that I personally loved, just being around the people that were doing like the lighting stuff, the mics, everything that was going on. It was so cool to be there while they're doing everything, because in theater it's done, it's done, and the only thing that you have there present with you is if you have mics on, then yeah, the person who's working the mics, you can see them, but everyone else is so background that you can barely even talk to them. Sometimes you don't even know their names. But that's something I love so much about this, is I got to know everyone who was working there. And it was so cool to actually have that connection with them instead of kind of thinking like, oh, they're kind of separate. Like, we're still together. It's still showing the outcome of the play. But in the film aspect, it was like we're all a machine and we're all working together. And it's all going on there. Like, there's no, oh, they did that yesterday. No, they're like doing it right there with you. And it was so exhilarating. Just like the rush of energy. It was great.
Yeah.
So that is a big difference, and I'm glad you all point that out, is that for film, and really for this, the crew is all around you. They're really close to you. And, you know, we're probably going to do a lot of comparisons to music theater and theater. It's not that way on stage. You've got your own acting space, you've got plenty of elbow room. And
Yeah.
so I always tell actors and ask them, you know, how do you feel about the crew being 10 feet away from you? Is that messing you up? Are you feeding off of that? Because some actors say, oh, it took me about a week to get used to, or no, it doesn't bother me, or whatever, because you're acting and you're surrounded by all these people. We're all within what, 10 feet, 12 feet of
Yeah.
you. And that doesn't happen in a play.
Right.
So what do you think about that?
Well, I will say for me, I have the worst poker face in the history of the world. So, like I mean, I know I'm an actor and everything, but you would think that I'd be better at like not laughing, and just like keeping my face composed. Like I cannot lie to save my life. So on that level, there were a few like challenges having the crew right there and having so many people right there who's just responding to us, and you know, just who is, you know, watching us and observing us. And you know, the script is pretty, you know, it's goofy and it's funny. And so like we had read the script together as a cast before, so I knew the parts that were especially ridiculous. And so it was really hard for me to like keep that contained, but at the same time, like I thought it was really like it's got the I don't know, like it's such a cool combination of, you know, like a film set, but there's also that energy of having like a live audience and people actually there responding to you. And you know, you can, you know, have kind of a relationship with them like you can have with an audience if you're doing a theater show. But like in like on the set, we were actually co-workers. We weren't just audience and cast member. We could just like, you know, after a take we could laugh and be like, oh my gosh, I totally messed that up, or you know, like have a conversation afterwards. So I really enjoyed that, even though it was a little bit getting used to, but I thought it was fun.
Yeah. For
Yeah,
me,
go ahead, Kieran.
no, you go ahead.
Okay. Well, I totally got energized by having the crew coming and rushing out during, you know, the breaks and stuff. And I think it was easier to film when it was just the crew, because well, they got to know the script just as well as we did. And since we did it multiple times and we formed relationships with them throughout the process, it was just like, you know, having a bunch of our friends up there working at the same time we were. And I feel like I did just better for them than I did for the actual live audience in that respect.
For me, I was relatively, I'm going to use the term decent here, though it might be a bad thing, of tuning most things out, especially with when we had the live studio audience, which is to a certain extent a good thing. However, like I mentioned earlier, you have to be aware of where everything is and the cameras and the boom, the mic. So sometimes I was having issues because I was in the moment of acting, that I was totally unaware of where I should be directing all of my acting towards, subtly. But still, that was an issue for me. But it was fun nonetheless. It was awesome.
Going back to what Nora said about having a terrible poker face, I have this tendency that when I laugh, it's really hard for me to stop laughing. And I remember one of the nights, I don't remember if it was with the audience or without the audience, but it was actually the third episode, Brett, when you directed. And it was the very first scene. And something happened with the picture of the cat. So I don't know what happened. I was holding back my laughter because we were doing a pickup. I was with Nora. And we were doing a pickup. And her face was so, like, she was really trying hard not to laugh, but she was making direct eye contact with me. And I just started laughing, and then I stopped, and then someone, I think it was one of the cameramen, I don't even remember who it was, they were like, okay, Mirta, just let it out. And I started laughing. I was like, I'm done. But that's something that's really cool about film, you know, like if that happens, we laugh it off. Even the audience like laughs together with you because they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like we've never seen this happen. In theater, you laugh and you're done. You're ruined unless you try to like mask it up or make it part of the performance, because otherwise it's like you disconnect the audience from that world that you put them in. In film, it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool, that happened. Okay, let's start now. And I thought that was hilarious, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. Well, because like with film, like especially having a live audience in the room, like they get to be a part of our rehearsal process in a way. Like they get to see us make mistakes and then just take it back and do it again. Where with theater, like we would be in closed rooms for our entire rehearsal process until we until we have this finished, polished project where we can let the audience in. And so I think that that's such a really cool thing where they get to see this kind of, rough version of what the finished product is going to be, and then when they do see the finished project, it's like a whole different thing, but like they saw all of the in-betweens and stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that for some people, obviously they go to watch a theater show or a show in general, or become an audience member for just complete immersion, and that's just one of the things that you're not going to get. And I was talking to a couple of people in the audience about this project that were watching, and some of them said, it was really, really interesting, but I just love theater for the complete immersion. And that's not what you're going to get with here. It's something so different, but it's so amazing. Like Nora said, is you just watch the whole process. And if something doesn't work, and if Mirta needs to laugh, she can laugh, and the audience is like, oh, this is what this is like. And no one in the audience, at least that I'm aware of, had ever been to a live studio audience recording like this before. I mean, I would be very surprised if anyone was. So it was a completely different, and from my perspective, I would think it would be completely awesome experience, because it's just so very different.
And as an actor, I think having the ability to go back in film and redo that scene just alleviates a lot of the pressure that comes with theater. That is just awesome.
Yeah, it allows for a lot more play and just like kind of things and experimenting. And seeing what works.
So
and also, I relate.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I relate film, or at least this experience of filming, I related it a lot to improv, just because I am obsessed with improvisation, and the yes and rule applies to filming 100%. If something happens, yes, okay, it happened, keep going. And it's just that, for me, it was so much fun. It was like we were playing a game every single time the camera was on, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
So
Amen.
You can go ahead.
One of the things that we did as part of the experiment is we decided that each of the 3 episodes would have a different director. And so I wanted you to talk about that, because your 3 directors are 3 different people, 3 different personalities, and address material so differently. And so I wanted to talk about that for just a little bit as well.
Yeah, like you said, all 3 people are 3 very different humans that have different backgrounds and a different relationship with theater. Because obviously you, Brett, you directed episode 3, and you're a faculty member who's done theater, theoretically, previously a theater professor, now more filming. So you have that from a faculty perspective. And then Emily, who directed episode 2, she is a film student, but she also has a lot of stuff to do with theater. So comes from our generational perspective, but has kind of that film and theater perspective both. And then Sydney, who's also a student, she's a theater student, so she hadn't done that much with film. And so she came at it at a much more normal theater perspective. This is your objective, and what is your inner objective, which obviously you need to be aware of all the time.
Of course.
But and there's a lot of stuff one can get into that, but it was just it's so interesting to see just what person was closer to more of a traditional theater perspective and who was a little bit more different. Like you, Brett, you had a lot more just go for it, especially in the rehearsal process before we started, just do it. Whereas with Sydney, there was a lot more character analysis going on before we started acting. And with Emily, it was kind of a mixture in between. So we really got that wide range of directors, which is a very valuable experience.
Yeah, kind of to piggyback off of that, it was so, like, it was really cool to just observe our directors and see the different, like, little nuanced ways that they were different. Like, I really noticed it in the notes that they would give and, like, the ways that they would approach rehearsals. Like, Sydney, she started, like, she's very musical, and she actually started as a musical theater major my freshman year. And so it was really cool to see, like, in her notes, she would focus a lot on, like, character questions and that sort of thing. But she would also give notes about how our voices were sounding, and, like, giving us notes about, like, okay, can you, like, bring this up here? And so it was really cool to see how her directing style had a very, like, kind of musical approach to it, even though we weren't doing anything musical in that episode. And then Emily, like, she's very, very film oriented, so she was very focused on, you know, the pictures and how things were going to look, and, like, when we were going to do things where, and you know, just kind of setting those things. And she had a very, like, relaxed attitude because she's so comfortable in that world. But, you know, it was very, you know, she was, you know, very comfortable with us just kind of playing with things and everything. And then Brett came along, and, you know, he's so experienced. Like, you know, he's the professor, and he's experienced, and, you know, he's done film for years. And so whereas, you know, Emily or Sydney would have done maybe 2 or 3 pickups, or, you know, done a couple of takes of a scene, we would do like maybe 2 takes, and then he'd be like, okay, it's good, move on. Because he knows, like, he's so, like, it's so natural for him that or I guess I should say you, because you're here. But, you know, it's so natural, and he just knows, like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna take this, and then, you know, he can just kind of see it. And yeah, Kieran, you mentioned the rehearsal process. Like, that was so different too, but really cool, because we had started in the other episodes with the script the first couple of days, and then the first day of rehearsal, Brett comes in and he goes, okay, go for it, no scripts. And none of us were memorized except for Alice, because Alice is
Yep.
Yeah.
None of us were memorized, none
The
of us
machine.
and we just had to go and improv, and it was such a cool, like, different approach. It was a different approach every time, which I really appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much nailed it on as far as the techniques that they use. I just remember us tallying how many takes it would be on that one Friday that we would film every week, and how late it went, and how each
God.
it just got shorter and shorter, and that was totally dependent on how the director, their experience with film and how they liked things. And I know we definitely got a kick out of that, getting out earlier once Brett came
Because
along.
I think, yeah, the first. Sorry, what were you saying, Rita?
Oh, no. I was just agreeing. You go ahead, Kieran.
Okay. No, the first week, man, I can't really remember the times, and obviously,
I think we got done
the
at like 12 or 11:45 most nights.
yeah, I got home at 12:14, I think. But I mean, that obviously comes with all of us actors being more familiar, and the crew being more familiar with the whole happening, with everything that was going on. And obviously, Brett, we've mentioned you're a lot more experienced in this field than
We
the
were out before
students.
10 the third week.
Yeah, we were out before 10 the third week, and it just gradually got less, and we're all like, huh, that's fine, I'll accept this is good with me.
Honestly, okay, was I the only one who subconsciously, like, having the time get shorter, I was thinking, is something wrong? Like, are we doing something?
I was thinking, we was like, should we take?
They're just giving up on us now. Like, it's just getting shorter and shorter. Like, they don't care. It's just gonna, like, come out however.
We're too far gone.
Honestly, like, subconsciously, I know that's not what it is, or I'm hoping that's not what it was, but
This
Yeah,
was
as soon because the first week with Sydney, we were really like digging in and polishing stuff and going over, making sure that she's got what she wants, which is great because that's what directors do, right? They got to get what they want to get. And it was really like long nights. As you guys said, sometimes we would get home like 12:15, 12:30, etc. But at the end of the day, at least I felt really fulfilled. Like it felt like, okay, like, yeah, we're working hard. And then the second week came along with Giovanna and it started getting a bit shorter. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's fine. We're doing good. We're making progress. And then Brett came along and it was like, bam, 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 bam. And I was like,
yeah.
whoa, hold your horses, cowboy. You only did this 2 times. What's going on?
And I
But
think
it was really great. The range and directors was amazing. It really was.
Yeah.
So this was meant to be a comedy. We sure hope it's going to be. I laugh when I watch it. So I guess I just wanted your take on this kind of comedy because situation comedy is specific and it's a little bit different maybe than other comedies that you've done, or maybe there's some similarities. So I just kind of wanted you to address the idea of being in this kind of a comedy and how you worked off of one another and how you approached it.
For me personally, I was in Comedy of Errors, which is a Shakespearean comedy. And it's very much a farcical comedy. So obviously when you're on stage on Wilner, it's a huge auditorium. So you have to be very out there and very extreme. And for those like jokes and farce to get to the audience, you kind of have to exaggerate most of the time, which I'm great at doing. Brett knows about this. But in situational comedy, it was like you need to tone it down a lot more. You need to keep in mind that you don't really need to hit those jokes hard because they're jokes that happen to a lot of people. You know, it's something that happens to everyone and everyone relates to, and you kind of have to trust that the audience is going to just take that personally and laugh instead of digging and drilling the joke and trying to get those laughs. Because something that Brett mentioned that I found really helpful was that you don't want to overextend the joke, because if you try and make it funny, it's not going to be funny. And that's something that personally helped me a lot, because you really need to tone it down because the camera's going to pick up any false movement that you make. So if you go extreme, it's just going to read false, and then the audience is going to get disconnected. And that was something very different from comedy that I've done before.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Brett, you were saying a number of times to all of us that the moment that you and your character think you're funny, the comedy is gone. Because the comedy is that we are honest people, like we are who we are, and we don't think that's weird. Like my character Ben is quirky and strange and has a few, I'm not going to call them tics, but it has a few habits or preferences that are a little different, and everyone has these. But the moment that I, as Ben, start thinking that I'm weird, there's no point to the joke anymore, because I full-heartedly believe that I am who I am, and there's nothing weird about that. So that was another really interesting thing about this comedy, and especially with the camera, which picks everything up. And I think a number of us, me definitely included, are people who I exaggerate my movements in normal life all the time. So having to work in front of a camera that's right there, or even if it's not right there, can zoom in right into your face. Having to tone all of your stuff back was really interesting. So I haven't seen the final product yet, but it'll be so interesting to see how that turned out, if I was able to constrain myself, or if my normal Kieran Shatler movements just pop up in the character, which is obviously not the point, but who knows? It was interesting to do that.
Yeah. Something that was really helpful for me that Brett, that you said a bunch throughout the whole process was that, like, you know, we were cast in these specific roles for a reason.
Yes.
But I mean, sometimes it was, we kind of took offense at it, but, you know, like we all have, you know, just qualities and character traits that are very similar to our characters. Not to say that we are our characters, but there are a lot of things that, I mean, there are a lot of things that are similar about me and Marla. And I'm not exactly like Marla. I kind of thought of it as Marla's kind of a heightened version of a few specific parts of me. But that was something that was really helpful for me because I think, Mirtas, I think I struggle with like the opposite thing where I don't really think of myself as a comedic actress. And like, you know, I really thrive on like more subtle, nuanced, like dramatic things. But it was really cool. Like once I started trusting the process and trusting the script and trusting my character and, you know, just letting, like Karen, like what you were saying, like letting Marla be Marla and just trusting that, you know, she, you know, letting her life and, you know, words kind of just be what they are. I think it just kind of was naturally funny because I wasn't trying too hard. I wasn't trying to make it funny, but it was just me living as a character, and just the circumstances that were surrounding it made it comedic because I think, like, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I
Going
ran out
off
of
of
words.
the stereotype thing. So yeah, the humor was very much dialogue based
Mhm.
in its delivery being not over exaggerated. And a lot of Sierra's dialogue was a lot of just burns directed at people. And I'm like, I was reading it through, I'm just like, and I go, you know, this isn't very different from how I am in real life. So I don't think I found the comedy in that very difficult.
You know what's interesting about this, because I've talked to some of your peers about this and talked about the roles that you were playing, and I made the statement, you know, that I told you about you were cast for a reason, and several of them are like, yeah, I can't really think of anybody else in our department that could play those, that would be best to play those roles. And you know, there was only one guy role, so typically all the other guys are like, I could do as well as Kieran, you know. But a couple of them said, you know, I watched the process and watched him working and said, that's not for me. That part's not for me.
Yeah.
And but there are parts for them too. And I hope when you watch a sitcom now, you think, okay, I would be cast as that part, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because every sitcom you've got stock archetypal characters.
Mm-hmm.
And you've probably, if you've been watching any during our stay-at-home time, you've probably been being able to see that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And
so
with
interesting thinking about like all of the different, you know, the different shows that I watch. I'm like, oh no, those are completely different. They're not cliche or stereotypes at all. But then you take a second to actually think about it and look at it. And I mean, some shows do a good job of disguising it, but I mean, pretty much every single show, like stereotypes exist for a reason and like archetypes
Yeah.
exist for a reason because they work and they make for really good storytelling and
Mhm.
often like really compelling stories and comedy, which I just think is so interesting.
and if we had really experimented and had the time to experiment and went beyond episode 3,
Hmm.
we would have introduced guest stars, the quirky
Uh-huh.
neighbor,
Yep.
Mhm.
some kind of mentor figure. Maybe one of
Oh
the
yeah.
characters gets an agent, and you can see how the universe of Thrilled to Announce can expand.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
we didn't. But that's okay, because really, to me, this was the best way to approach it since we'd never done it before. But you can see how you can introduce all of this, and it would add another layer
Hmm.
to the main 4 of the story.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, I think 3 was a good number for now, because if I wouldn't have school and if I wouldn't have work, I could have done more than 3.
Of
But
course.
after
For
3, I
sure.
think all of us were like, I love this. This is an amazing process, but I have school that I have been partially maybe neglecting.
So we went at it at a pretty full gallop for 4 weeks.
Mhm.
How
Mhm.
did you feel at the end of the 4 weeks? And then we'll wrap this up.
Ooh. Well, tired. Um, that was a big one. And I think like just I felt very like accomplished too, even though I felt so tired and drained after the 4 weeks. Like there were a lot of parts of me that were just very ready to be done. But I think there was just a big part of me too that was able to look back on it and go, wow, like we just did that in 4 weeks. And like just it's just I don't know, I still think it's so incredible to like I forget sometimes with everything going on that we did that at the beginning of this semester. And like, never been done before on a university campus. And we had such a huge amount of people working on it, and it was exhausting and so much work, but I mean we did it, and I just think that that's really incredible. So I think there was a really big sense of achievement for me in that, and just like pride in like not only myself but just in everybody involved, that like everybody just really stepped up to the plate and did their work so beautifully, and never really complained about anything, but just kind of did what needed to be done and did more than what needed to be done too.
For me personally, I found the entire process super exciting and fun. But after the 4th week, like when we were done, everything just kind of like came crashing down on me. Like I realized how physically exhausted I was, emotionally exhausted, mentally exhausted from being in that mindset of like having to divide my life every single day into like 3 different categories or more, because there's school, there's work, there is the actual shooting time, practicing your lines, doing homework, dealing with relationships outside of simply school and family. And not to mention that I would literally not reach my house until 12, because from 8 a.m., which is when my classes would start, I would go all the way till 12 or whenever we were done shooting, and I would not get to my house because I live in Mays, which is like 18, 20 minutes away from campus and from where we're rehearsing and filming stuff. So McDonald's was my best friend during filming. And
This
my
broadcast is
body
sponsored
does
by
not
McDonald's.
appreciate those
That's right.
decisions at all. At all. So catching up on that diet after those 4 weeks of pure McDonald's, let's just say.
I think for me, it was relatively similar to what Nora and Mirta have been saying. That like at the end, even though it was such an amazing process, and if that's what I would have been doing, I could have gone on with that much more. But with all the other stuff going on, aka life, it was really, I think it was time. Like I said, 3 episodes was a good time to stop it at, simply because if it would have gone longer than that, that would have been like a total of 5. If it would have been 4 episodes, that would have been a total of 5 weeks of all this going on. And I mean, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and Saturday, of course, but Saturday we didn't have school, so it wasn't as noticeable. But Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, our call time was about 6, if not 5 or 5:30, and that was a really early call time. And I had on Wednesdays I have class until, or have had class until 6:20. Right. So, and then everyone else was or we were called at 6:30, and my class was 20-30 minutes away. Because it was on the South Campus. I just had to zoom over there, and I had no break for a really long time, partially until 11 at night sometimes. So that was a lot, but it was fun, and because there were so many people there who were in really good spirits and so many fun people to work with, and a lot of supportive people as well. Everyone was super supportive. So the environment was good enough to sustain it for even longer than when it did go. But I think 3 weeks was a good amount, or 3 episodes was a good amount.
Mm-hmm.
I was obviously a bit tired as well. And yes, like everyone's been saying, it was all great. It is very taxing. But I was kind of going into like the Monday thinking, okay, here we go. We're going to do another one. So
Yeah.
like, I feel like I could have squeezed one more out of me if I wanted to, but it was probably healthy not to.
Yeah.
But it was also that that lull after any project you do where you're like, okay, I have to be doing something now. What am I gonna do? So I think it's right then that I started doing my next personal project. So I think it just helped inspire more self-motivation, if anything.
Well, that is all the time that we're going to give to this. I know you guys could continue talking about it, but this is probably a good behind the scenes. I appreciate your time. Uh, really encourage folks to support Thrilled to Announce it being a collaboration between Wichita State University Theater and filmmaking departments. And we really hope that you enjoy it. Thanks.